Okay, here we are, Dirty Rascals Force in the Dirt Racing Series, Stage 1, Downtown Titans in the Penne League, which is America's West, 9:30 p.m. Eastern, taking on Downtown Titans. So there's the map. Down Titans Grove reversed Zwift KOM, Watopia Sprint. Reverse is a fastest through. KOM is first across the line, and Sprint is fastest through. In DRS, we like to make things a little bit different, and I like it. Anyway, so here's the start coming out of the pens. We're probably going to jump forward in a second or two. It was all pretty relaxed until we got to the forest, so here we go, entering into Titans Grove, just to save us a bit of time. Entering this forest is false flat, about 1 or 2% little gradient, and from that moment on, there's nothing really that's flat. It's a leg burner all the way through, and it's a lot of fun. So, the idea is you got to keep the legs spinning. You got to give a couple bursts on the downhills to get the momentum to carry you through the uphill so that your legs don't burn and you hit the resistance right away. So it's part of the Zwift graft is to know when to spin, know when to take your rests, and stick within the pack. So you can see my cadence goes a little bit higher. I get into a big gear, spin it out, and on the downhill and on the uphills. That way your legs don't feel the resistance as much, and you don't have to really push as hard. I was having issues with my live scoring on the left. You see that black screen above my head? I've been trying to make that work for the last little bit, and I just haven't been able to. I just don't know how to work it. I'll try to mess around with it. Hopefully for the next points race, we can have that figured out. So there's a couple dirt teams in this field. There's an OTR team, there's a Peloton team, and I think that's it. About 35, 36 guys. Here we are coming up to the last little bit before we get to the start of the reverse KOM, Titans Grove reverse KOM, which is one of my favorite segments. I've done this segment a gazillion times, and I do tend to enjoy the timing of it, the pace of it. And so my usual tactic, if I'm feeling okay, is to give it a little bit of a leg and tail gun from the back. Coming off not really a great winter training season, I really don't know how I'm feeling right now. Didn't know if I had the legs to tail gun that aggressively, so I did stay close-ish enough to the pack to make sure that I wasn't putting myself in jeopardy. So you can see me about a second off the back there. I do have a teammate with me, Tony, who was also tail gunning, I think, on purpose. And here we are coming up to the segment. There it is, the green line. So the idea here is you just give her to make up the gap of a second or two to get into the pack, and then you kind of sit in. Once you get into the pack, use the draft. There's a little bit of it, even though it's uphill, it's not too steep, so you can still get some rest in here. You can see my watts are down to 400 now, but I am resting here. I'm not really giving her. The momentum from my initial burst is carrying me through, so I'm using this as a bit of a minute to kind of rest up. And then usually when I see that big boulder on the right hand side is when I decide, okay, it's time to go. And then by the time my brain processes it, it's about that post, and here I go. Kick it up to the 9s, watts per kilo, just to give one last little push, get my momentum to carry me through. I didn't realize my teammate Larry was up, so I kind of feel bad for stealing his thunder, but I managed to snag FTS there. Now on the downhill, there's a little bit of a playing around with my scoring screen if I could. On the downhill, we had gapped some guys behind us about 10-15 seconds, and so I had an initial thought of let's push and not let them recover, but in the end we decided it wasn't worth it, and we let them catch So fast forward a little bit to kind of the end of the flats. We've come out of the downhill in Titans Grove, and we're all kind of back together, a decent pack of 20 or so, and we're gonna attack the forward KOM in a minute. Coming out of the tunnel, there's a little stinger here. That's just meant to take a bit of a bite out of your legs before you climb the forward. And the trick here is not to push too hard so that you are pushing through the wind. Stay in the pack. You see me kind of tail off. I'm fighting for position here because it is FAL, so first across the line. Doesn't matter what your time is as long as you're at the front at the banner. So this is the forward KOM, which is kind of a 3-stage climb, fairly steep. We take a left turn here, and then we end up crossing the bridge. And once we cross the bridge, right afterwards is when we start the climb proper. So I'm gonna slow it down there for a split second. And this is the first part of the climb that peaks at around 10-12%, somewhere here, or maybe not, right after the bend. There's the 10% climb. Here, my goal is just to sit in the pack. Guys are hitting their feathers, they're pushing through. I'm happy sitting 9-10, conserving for the push that's going to come through on the second part of this climb, conserving energy, not getting too worried, you know, sitting in around 4.5, 5 watts per kilo at this level, I think was good for me. Get a little bit of a rest here. You can see my squinting, my heart rate's relatively high, but here's where the rest of the pack hits their feathers and then they go. But if you go too early here, there's a bit of a flat before the banner. So if you go too early, you end up gassing before. So you got to really spread out your effort to make sure that you time it right, especially for an FAL. So I'm still kind of holding back, just keeping a high cadence, making sure that I'm connected, I'm surfing wheels. And then once I crest over is when I start going to try to make up those last couple spots. It's just a quick 10-second effort. And at this one, I got second FAL. I snagged it from Tony. Sorry, Tony. Couldn't quite get the OTR guide, but that's okay. Kind of dying here, I'll be honest. Struggling to kind of stay on. Pack's coming through rather quickly. But I think at this point is where I realize, okay, I've got enough to just coast. And I make the decision here that I'm just going to stay connected on the sprint. So I'm not going to go for the sprint. I know it's valuable points, but honestly, it's such a long sprint. I didn't think that I had the legs to be able to do the sprint and then really contest the finish properly. So the name of the game here is just conserve energy. We've got a little bit of a downhill leading into the sprint itself. And so get my heart rate down. Thankfully, it came down rather quickly. I'm in the 160s, which is totally fine for me before a relatively hard effort before we hit this sprint. So there's a bit of an uphill coming up before the sprint, which again, kind of designed to take the sting out of the legs for contesting that sprint. And a lot of guys pop their feathers here, which kind of makes sense. Conserve and get some energy. I get it. I decided not to use my feather because I was doing 200 kind of watts anyway, so it didn't feel like a decent use of my feather at this point. I decided to hold my feather until after the sprint, when we start climbing the switchbacks leading into the S's. So here we go through the village. It's going to be a right turn, left turn, and then the sprint comes. So I know I have to put in an effort, and I was telling my teammates, it's this weird place where if you contest it too hard, you'll die for the finish, but if you don't contest it enough, you'll get dropped. And so I kind of half-assed it, and here I go. I hit my feather knowing that we're going to hit the this little switchback climb here. And a lot of people had the same thought, and thankfully made up the wheels rather quickly without too hard of an effort, like 280, 300 watts. It's not bad when you consider it. I thought for a minute I was going to get stuck behind Drake Watts, one of the other dirt guys, but thankfully we got picked up by some other OTR and red Peloton riders, and I managed to stick to the pack. And I'm feeling okay. My heart rate's 180s. I know I'm in the S's. I've done this finish a bunch of times. I know how to time it. So my plan going into the finish was just to surf wheels until the end of the downhill. And here, let me slow it down for you. It's just to surf wheels. I know a lot of people go here and they just gas. So I was going to be a little bit more reactive than proactive, and making sure that I don't let anybody get too far ahead if they go long, but also not be too far behind if I see somebody give her. So I see this OTR guy go, and I react rather quickly. It's way too far for him to go solo at 500 meters. So you see I cover his move, and then I surf his wheel, and then I see the Peloton guy also make a move, and then cover his move and decide, oh, let's just go for it. And managed to hold off OTR for the win, thankfully. He went a little too early. I think if he had gone a little bit later, he would have probably caught me, because I was pretty toast by that point. So pretty happy with that. First on the FTS on Titans Grove reverse. Second at fail on the Hilly KOM. I'm not sure what I got on the sprint. I don't know if I got many points on the sprint, and quite honestly, I'm kind of okay with that, because my strategy to maintain, conserve energy and really go in for the win worked out.